The music world is shaken. The impossible has happened. Kendrick Lamar, the voice of a generation, has just made history, crushing records, silencing doubters, and leaving even Drake with no way out. This isn't just another tour, another album, another headline. This is a cultural earthquake. The numbers are insane. The reactions are explosive. And the truth? Drake can't escape it, no matter what he does. Tonight, we unravel the story of how Kendrick redefined greatness, how the world crowned a new king, and how Drake was forced to watch it all from the sidelines. Buckle up, because what you're about to witness isn't just history being made, it's history being rewritten. Keycap hashtag Kendrick Lamar, hashtag Drake, hashtag hip-hop history. Every era has its defining moment. The Beatles had their stadiums. Michael Jackson had his moonwalk. And now, Kendrick Lamar has his historic tour. But this story doesn't begin with 1 million tickets sold. It doesn't begin with headlines or hashtags. It begins in Compton, California, where a kid with a notebook and a dream started shaping the future of hip-hop. Movie camera slow panned across Compton streets, gritty but alive with energy. Kendrick Duckworth was just another face in the crowd. But unlike most kids his age, he had a gift, the ability to turn his pain into poetry, his experiences into verses that cut deeper than the beat. His earliest mixtapes didn't sell millions. They didn't make Billboard history. What they did was something greater. They earned respect. And in hip-hop, respect is the first step toward immortality. By the time his debut album Good Kid, Mad City dropped, the world realized Kendrick wasn't here to play. He wasn't just another rapper chasing clout. He was a storyteller, weaving narratives about life, survival, and redemption. And the industry couldn't ignore him. The whispers began. This kid is different. Fire cut to fans screaming his lyrics in small clubs, lights flashing, phones recording every second. But here's the truth. Talent alone doesn't make history. To make history, you need consistency. And that's exactly what Kendrick delivered. With To Pimp a Butterfly, he shook the world. A jazz-infused masterpiece that critics hailed as one of the greatest hip-hop albums ever made. It wasn't just music. It was social commentary, cultural philosophy, and raw honesty. People didn't just listen, they studied it. Universities began teaching classes on Kendrick's lyrics. Politicians quoted him. Fans tattooed his verses. Then came Damn. And with it, something nobody expected. For the first time in history, a hip-hop artist won the Pulitzer Prize. Think about that. The same award given to literary giants, poets, and journalists, now in the hands of a rapper from Compton. Movie camera montage of headlines across the screen. Pulitzer Prize goes to Kendrick Lamar. Hip-hop enters the history books. Kendrick becomes the voice of a generation. And while Kendrick's star rose higher, another giant was watching from the sidelines, Drake. Drake had always been untouchable in his own lane. The streaming king, the chart destroyer, the man who could drop an album and own Spotify's top 10 overnight. To the mainstream, Drake was hip-hop's golden boy. But to the culture, questions remained. Could Drake's dominance be measured in more than streams and singles? Could he stand the test of history the way Kendrick was beginning to? Fire narrator voice sharpens. The contrast was becoming clearer with every passing year. Drake had numbers. Kendrick had impact. Drake had hits. Kendrick had history. Drake had fans. Kendrick had believers. And then the announcement came. Kendrick Lamar, World Tour. 1 million tickets. The internet erupted. Within hours, hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag King Kendrick. Hashtag Historic Tour. Hashtag Pulitzer King. Fans swarmed at Ticketmaster, crashing servers. Pre-sale codes were leaked, lines formed around arenas, resale prices skyrocketed. And within hours, not days, not weeks, the unthinkable happened. 1 million tickets. Gone. Sold. History. Movie camera cut to fans screaming on TikTok and Twitter, posting receipts, holding tickets like golden treasures. The media couldn't contain itself. Headlines blared across every platform. Kendrick Lamar just made history. The fastest-selling hip-hop tour ever. Drake left in the shadows. And here's the kicker. While the world celebrated Kendrick, they also looked toward Drake. They wanted his reaction. They wanted to see what the streaming king had to say about the touring king. But Drake said nothing. And sometimes silence is the loudest sound of all. Movie camera cinematic pause. Narrator voice drops to a whisper. Drake couldn't escape it. The truth was inescapable. Kendrick Lamar had just achieved something he never had. But this wasn't the end of the story. This was only part one. Because as Kendrick began his journey across continents, as arenas filled with chants of his name, the clash of legacies was only beginning. And in part two, the pressure on Drake would reach a boiling point. Keycap hashtag Kendrick Lamar, hashtag Drake, hashtag Historic Tour. The headlines spread like wildfire. Every outlet, every blog, every podcast, all echoing the same truth. Kendrick Lamar just made history. But in the world of hip-hop, no triumph goes unnoticed. And no rival remains silent forever. Drake was watching. Movie camera cut to symbolic scene. Drake in his Toronto penthouse, phone in hand, scrolling through endless clips of Kendrick's sold-out arenas. Everywhere he looked, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, it was the same. Stadiums shaking, fans chanting, critics praising. Kendrick was the headline, the conversation, the culture. And for Drake, the silence was becoming unbearable. Because here's the reality. Drake had always built his dominance on visibility. He was the soundtrack of summers, the king of memes, the constant presence in the charts. His power came from being everywhere all the time. But now he was nowhere. Fire narrator voice intensifies. The one thing Drake could never escape was comparison. Fans weren't just celebrating Kendrick, they were using him as a weapon. Tweets rolled in by the thousands. At Drake, can you sell 1 million seats? Didn't think so. Kendrick just made history while Drake makes playlists. Legacy streams. Sorry Drizzy. Hashtag Kendrick won. And the hashtags? They were merciless. Hashtag King Kendrick. Hashtag Drake speechless. Hashtag Historic Tour. But it wasn't just fans. It was the industry itself. Major outlets declared a cultural shift. Think pieces popped up overnight. Has Kendrick surpassed Drake? Is this the end of an era? The true king of hip-hop revealed. For years, Drake had worn the crown of commercial success. But Kendrick had seized the crown of cultural dominance. And in hip-hop, culture is everything. Musical notes cue montage of stadium crowds chanting Kendrick. Kendrick, across cities, Los Angeles, New York, London, Paris. Each night of the tour felt like a coronation. Fans weren't just attending concerts, they were witnessing history. Clips went viral of fans breaking down in tears, overwhelmed by the energy. Celebrities posted live reactions. At Rihanna, K really is on another level. Hashtag Pulitzer King. At LeBron James, man, chills watching this tour. Legendary vibes. At Billboard, no rapper has ever achieved this. At Kendrick Lamar just changed the game. Fire, and with every shout-out, every headline, Drake's silence grew heavier. The whispers began. Was he scared? Was he plotting? Or was he simply defeated? Some insiders claimed Drake was rushing to finish a surprise album, a response to reclaim the spotlight. Others said he was calling his OVO team day and night, brainstorming ways to match the momentum. But no matter what he did, the narrative was slipping away. Because here's the brutal truth. You can buy streams, you can buy billboards, but you cannot buy history. And Kendrick Lamar had just made it. Movie camera narrator lowers voice for suspense. The pressure was suffocating. For the first time in a decade, Drake wasn't the one setting the pace. He was chasing. He was in the storm. He was in the storm's shadow. Fans could feel it too. At Kendrick's shows, banners appeared. This is real dominance. Drake can't touch this. 1 million strong. Hashtag King Kendrick. Even Kendrick himself didn't have to say a word. He never dissed Drake directly, never taunted him on stage. He didn't have to. The numbers spoke. The crowd spoke. The culture spoke. Fire narrator voice rises with intensity. And that silence, Kendrick's silence, was louder than any diss track ever could be. Because true kings don't need to remind you of their power. Their power reminds you of them. Meanwhile, Drake's empire felt the cracks. His fans defended him online. Drake's still the GOAT. Don't forget the charts. One tour doesn't erase a decade of dominance. Streaming numbers don't lie. But the counterarguments were sharper. Charts fade. Legacy lasts forever. 1 million people bought history. That's bigger than streams. Culture, Spotify. And deep down, even Drake's loyalists knew this was different. Movie camera, imaginary cinematic shot. Drake in the studio, recording late into the night, eyes heavy with frustration, while news clips of Kendrick's tour play silently on TV screens around him. This wasn't just a rivalry anymore. It was a shift of eras. Drake was yesterday's headline. Kendrick was today's. And tomorrow's. The clash wasn't about hits. It wasn't about streams. It wasn't even about money. It was about something far greater, legacy. And as Kendrick's tour rolled into its final leg, it became clear Drake couldn't escape the truth. Kendrick Lamar had cemented himself not just as a star, but as a legend. Fire narrator voice whispers with weight.
Part 2 was the clash.
But Part 3 would be the aftermath. The moment the world decided who truly sits on hip-hop's throne. Keycap hashtag Kendrick vs. Drake, hashtag King Kendrick, hashtag hip-hop history. The final city, the final night, the final roar of a million voices echoing across continents. Kendrick Lamar stood center stage, bathed in golden light, not just as a performer, but as a symbol. This wasn't the end of a tour. This was the cementing of a legacy. Movie camera slow-motion crowd shots, fans chanting, waving banners, tears streaming down faces. And then came the official word. The historic tour had not only broken records, it had rewritten history. Fastest-selling hip-hop tour ever. 1 million tickets sold. Stadiums filled across the globe. The numbers were beyond dispute. The culture was undeniable. The world had its headline. Kendrick Lamar just made history, and Drake can't escape the truth. Fire narrator voice deepens. Because no matter what Drake did next, the truth was already written. For Drake, the silence had been his loudest response. He had no interview, no viral clip, no clever Instagram caption. Fans tagged him endlessly. Your move at Drake eyes. Kendrick already won. Bro, hashtag historic tour. Even Drake knows he can't top this. But Drake didn't answer. Some saw his silence as strategy, the calm before a comeback storm. Others saw it as defeat, a quiet admission that this wasn't his moment to win. Whatever the case, the comparison was inescapable. Musical notes, clips flash, Kendrick's stadium shaking, crowds chanting his name like a king being crowned. The culture chose. Critics across the globe wrote glowing reviews. This was not a concert. It was a revolution. Kendrick Lamar has transcended music. No rival can deny what we witnessed. History. Universities began preparing new courses around his work. Think pieces flooded podcasts and YouTube, declaring that Kendrick had cemented himself as hip-hop's greatest living artist. Even fellow rappers who once stayed neutral began tipping their hats. At Eminem, respect to the king of storytelling. At Kendrick Lamar made history. At Jay's, legacy over numbers. Kendrick just proved it. At Rihanna, Pulitzer Plus tour of the century equals icon. But what truly separated Kendrick wasn't just what he achieved, it was how he achieved it. He didn't need gimmicks. He didn't need controversy. He didn't need to scream his dominance from rooftops.
He let the work speak. He let the people decide.
And the people crowned him. Fire narrator voice sharpens. That's why Drake couldn't escape the truth. Because this wasn't about fan bases arguing online. It wasn't about diss tracks. It wasn't even about chart numbers. It was about the undeniable reality that Kendrick Lamar had done something no one else could. And no amount of streams could erase that. Movie camera cut to global montage. In London, thousands of fans chanting Kendrick's lyrics outside Wembley long after the show ended. In Paris, critics calling his performance a once-in-a-lifetime moment. In Tokyo, fans waving banners that read, "This is history." In New York, murals being painted overnight with Kendrick's face crowned in gold. Every city told the same story. Kendrick Lamar wasn't just touring, he was immortalizing himself. And Drake? He became a spectator in his own era. Fire narrator lowers voice. For over a decade, Drake had been the star. But in the end, he wasn't the one making history. Kendrick was. The aftermath was undeniable. Fans labeled Kendrick the people's champion, the true king of hip-hop, the Pulitzer poet, and everywhere, the same hashtag King Kendrick. But here's the most powerful part of the story. Kendrick never asked for the crown. He never chased it.
He never needed to.
Because when you make history, the crown finds you. Movie camera final cinematic shot. Kendrick on stage, arms stretched wide, the crowd chanting his name as confetti rains down like gold dust. Drake can't escape the truth. The world saw it. The culture felt it. The history books already wrote it. Fire narrator voice, final line. Kendrick Lamar didn't just make history, he became it. Keycap hashtag Kendrick Lamar, hashtag historic tour, hashtag King Kendrick. And there it is, the moment the world will never forget. Kendrick Lamar just made history, and no matter what Drake says or does, he cannot escape the truth. But the story doesn't end here, it continues with you. What do you think? Has Kendrick officially claimed the throne as the greatest of this era, or is Drake still capable of reclaiming his crown? Drop your hottest takes in the comments below. We're reading every single one. If you felt the chills watching Kendrick's journey, smash that like button because it helps us bring more stories like this to life. And if you're new here, hit subscribe and join the movement because this isn't just music, this is history in the making. Share this with every hip-hop fan you know, and let's keep the conversation alive. The crown has been claimed, but the debate rages on. Keycap hashtag Kendrick versus Drake, hashtag hip-hop history.